So what does a popular paranormal fiction writer have to say about mysterious topics like UFOs, ghosts and hauntings, Bigfoot, mysterious disappearances, and more? Author of the Veritas Codex Paranormal Fiction book series, Betsey Kulakowski discusses her thoughts on these topics and shares a little bit about her fictional book series on this episode of Passion for the Paranormal. Well, greetings, fellow truth seekers, and welcome once again to Passion for the Paranormal, bringing a passion for the paranormal to you. I'm your host, Curry Stegan, and as always, it's exciting to be back here with you once again, and exciting to have my next guest joining me. It is a little bit of a different angle than previous episodes in that Betsey Kulakowski is a paranormal fiction writer. She writes the Veritas Codex book series. Again, it's a paranormal fiction series and, suspenseful and kind of thriller type series as well. So excited to have Betsey joining me. She also considers herself kind of an amateur paranormal investigator and is very interested in the topics of UFOs and ghosts and hauntings and Bigfoot and other mysterious things. So she's also going to be talking to me about her thoughts on those. So great to have Betsey joining me. If you've been following the news and recent developments in the UFO UAP issue, another exciting development. Tuesday morning, there was a congressional hearing, and it was actually a congressional subcommittee that held hearings on the UFO issue, and they were asking questions to a couple of defense officials. And the two defense officials, the first one that was being asked questions of was Scott Bray, and he is the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence. And if you followed the UAP task force, that is being led by the Department of the Navy. So it only makes sense that they would be having him on the stand asking questions. And Robert Moultrie, who is the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. And Chairman Andre Carson kicked off the session, acknowledging that there have been past governmental efforts to try and investigate UFOs and stating that obviously UAPs are unexplained and that they are worthy of being investigated. He described people who have recently reported UFOs as witnesses and not kooks. Carson gave an early account about, or actually a shout out to the civilian organization MUFON and Jeremy Corbell, the filmmaker who helped release a few of the noteworthy videos lately about UFOs. And other congressmen who made comments and asked questions, Representative Eric Crawford. And Crawford asked for an update on the latest governmental UFO effort and wondering why we haven't made more progress on the issue. He also questioned whether UFOs were the result of China, Russia, or Russian hypersonic weapons development. Robert Moultrie responded by admitting there are foreign known unknowns out there, meaning technology that our military is aware of, but he doesn't know much about it. UFOs, on the other hand, he stated, are those systems and reports that fall into the category of completely unknown. Scott Bray agreed that they must follow the facts wherever they lead, stressing the importance of destigmatizing the act of reporting UFO sightings. So interesting stuff. Representative Adam Schiff also made some comments, reminding intelligence officials that the Department of Defense has an obligation to tell the truth to the public on the work that's going on the UFO issue, stating that secrecy only breeds mistrust and speculation. Schiff went on to acknowledge the reality of objects in the sky, saying there is something out there and they seem to move in directions inconsistent with physics. Again, these are, if you've watched the Navy UFO videos, I think many have reached that same conclusion based on the things that were going on. It kind of defies physics. Interesting stuff. I thought one of the most interesting comments and hard-hitting questions came from Representative Jim Hines. Actually, I apologize, not Jim Hines. It was actually Representative Mike Gallagher, who really came out, again, asking some hard-hitting questions about covert initiatives in the time period between the Air Force's Project Blue Book and ATIP, including the work of any contractors like OSIP, which would be Robert Bigelow's project. Gallagher also asked some other tough questions inquiring about UFOs shutting down missile silos over Malmstrom Air Force Base. As Robert Salas, former Air Force Captain Robert Salas, had stated and testified, and that Robert Hastings had written about. Also asking the question, which I'm sure some are very happy about, asking about the infamous Wilson memo. The infamous Wilson-Davis memo that, claims that there are special access programs out there in the government concerning UFOs that are ongoing within our government. So very interesting congressional hearing, some interesting commentary and questions asked, so you can check that out. I will hang that link on the show notes so you can go on there and read more about it if you would like. All right, if you haven't been to the website, you can visit us there at Passion, the number 4, theparanormal.com. And you can also check us out on Facebook at Passion, facebook.com/passion, the number 4, the paranormal. Make sure whatever podcast app you're using out there that you be sure to hit the subscribe button and copy and paste a link, share it with a friend, coworker, family member, and let them know about the show as well. Use that word of mouth. We appreciate that. And I'm really anxious to get into this discussion with Betsey. Again, I've never had a paranormal fiction author come on the show before. And I always like to cover new ground on the show. I'm really excited to talk to Betsey and also get her thoughts on the other mysterious topics like I mentioned before. So without further ado, I'm going to get into discussion with Betsey. Really hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. And once again, thank you so much for tuning into the show. Guest is Betsey Kulakowski. And Betsey has been writing and telling stories since she was a young child. At age 6, she wrote her first book. And Betsey's first writing gig was with KEBC Radio in Oklahoma City, where she conducted interviews and wrote reviews for country music's rising stars. Betsey also was a federally trained investigator with over 30 years' experience as an occupational safety specialist with a degree in emergency management. She went on to write in professional safety and health journals and trade magazines. All the while, she was honing her craft and writing several genres of fiction, eventually going on to pen numerous manuscripts. Betsey also has experience as a paranormal investigator and is an avid history buff and family genealogist. If paranormal-themed fiction stories are your thing, then you will love her riveting book series. She's now got 4 books to her name, which are all part of her Veritas Codex series. And all 4 books have experienced great success. So, Betsey, thank you so much for joining me on the show tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. This is kind of a new angle for me on the show. I've never covered paranormal fiction, which I like to cover new things on the show. So this is kind of exciting for me because, it's kind of new ground. And interesting stuff, and sounds like your books kind of cover a number of different types of exciting but mysterious topics, paranormal related themes. But let's step back. Let's kind of hear your story, how this all kind of came together and how you started writing these books.
Sure. I actually started writing what would become the Veritas Codex in 2009. I really didn't know what was going to happen with the story. I just knew I needed practice. So I started writing the books for practice. And I was watching some paranormal show probably 2, 3 o'clock in the morning one night. And I thought, you know what? They never find anything. Wouldn't it be interesting if they actually found something, but it was a truth they could never tell? And that was the foundation for the whole series. So I began writing that in 2009, and that first book that I wrote for practice went pretty well. So I wrote a second one, and then a third one, and then a fourth one. But I didn't know what to do with them. I had no path to publication. I had never published a book. I was busy doing other things, raising a family, working a job. And I thought, well, this might be my retirement plan. I'll come back to these and circle back around. In 2018, I was working on my degree in emergency management, and our college had a writers conference. And I decided I was going to go to that. And I started really learning the craft and learning the skill and honing my career as a writer. And within a couple of years, the Veritas Codex came to be.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about your books is I think they cover a lot of different mysterious topics, and
Mhm.
sound like they're really quite a suspenseful kind of thriller too. And the first book, the Veritas Codex, kind of gets into the Bigfoot topic, but maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's talk about the main character in your books, and
Mhm.
that is the character of Lauren Grayson. And talk about how you kind of came up with her, and a little bit about her journey in this
Sure.
interesting series.
Yeah, I wanted a really strong female protagonist because at the time the books that I was reading were predominantly male protagonists that were leading these thriller books. So I really wanted a strong female character. Lauren came to mind really quickly. She is kind of a mix of several people that I know, and family members and other people, but I just really wanted somebody who was smart, who wasn't afraid to get out, go camping and get her hands dirty and traipse around in the woods with the guys, and that kind of thing never bothered her. She's a biological anthropologist, so she's incredibly intelligent, very smart. She has a passion for curiosity and just to be learning new things all the time. And so when she sets out on the quest to answer the world's greatest mysteries, she does it all from a scientific standpoint. She bases everything on the evidence that she can find, but she also holds on to the truth that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So that's a little bit about Lauren.
Interesting. And there's also mention of her brother as another character in the book. Talk about kind of their relationship and how that develops in the books.
Right. So Laura's brother Michael has always been the thorn in her side. She actually is one of 7 kids. And Michael has always just kind of been the rabbit, the leader of all the mischief in her family. And he is always trying to one up her in everything. And by the 3rd book, we get a good look at the inside of their relationship to see why their relationship has become the way it is. And he's very competitive. He always says that he's going to find aliens before she does. And when it comes down to it, they have to work together.
Yeah, that sounds like kind of a dynamic relationship. And I think I heard reference in another interview you mentioned to the X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
Did that have some
Very much so.
influence on this
Oh
book
yeah,
series?
I love the X-Files. I love the whole Mulder and Scully dynamic. I loved some of the mysteries that they got into. I try to have a very broad spectrum when we start getting into these mysteries. We're going to cover everything from Bigfoot to aliens to the Mayan apocalypse, time travel. We'll get into the Templars. We'll get into the Devil's Codex. There's a lot of mysteries that have yet to be covered. But at some point, I'm going to try to hit all of them because I enjoy every bit of those. I have done some paranormal investigations, ghost hunting. I've been into the woods. I've gone looking for Bigfoot. I consider myself an amateur, but I am an investigator by trade. And so that's something that I'm always looking for those answers and looking for more clues and answers to those mysteries.
Yeah, that was kind of my next question for you. I've also been involved in paranormal investigating for a number of years. Talk about, I mean, did you have any experiences when you were younger? What kind of led you into that?
Well, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. We lived in Seattle for a brief while when I was a kid, well, actually north of Seattle in Bellingham. And so I kind of grew up in that area, and that's really where I first heard about Bigfoot. That was my monster growing up. So I always loved anything to do with Bigfoot, any book I could get my hands on. I remember the episode of the $6 Million Man that had Bigfoot on it. I always loved the shows like In Search of and Ripley's Believe It or Not. So I was always kind of into that thing when I was a kid. As I got older and started to learn more, I really got interested in the ghost, the TV show Ghost Adventures came out, and I was really into that. My mother and I, being history buffs, would go out to Fort Reno, which is here in Oklahoma, and we had done some ghost investigations out there because they've had so much paranormal activity that they bring paranormal investigators out over a Friday night, and the public can come and follow along, and they have all their equipment and all their tech, and they use all these different techniques to try and verify some of the stories that they're finding. And we were actually able to do some historical research and help them answer some stories that they had been getting from the paranormal investigators. We were actually able to back up the history behind the stories that they were coming up with. So that was a lot of fun for me to actually take my love of history and to use my abilities as a genealogist and a researcher to go in and actually find the truth and find the real history behind what happened. And I have some very interesting pictures that I have taken there that I can't explain. You know, face in the window, I've had my leg touched, I've had my pant leg pulled. We had a window fall out and nearly hit us both as we were walking around one of the buildings. So I've had some pretty interesting experiences there. I also went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and my first assignment was to inspect Charity Hospital. And that place still gives me the creeps. Very interesting. You know, you'd see something out of the corner of your eye, and there's only 2 of us in the whole building, and it's, you know, the oldest public hospital in North America that was built in like 1742. Large 27-story building now. I mean, they just built and built and built. And we were the only people in the building, and I mean, my partner's in front of me, and I keep seeing something out of the corner of my eye, and that just was really unnerving. So I've done some investigations like that. I got a little bit of documentation, but I'm always out there on the search for other things that we can go looking for too.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, did you come into it with a little bit of a skeptical viewpoint, or were you kind of open to this from the get-go?
I consider myself pretty open. I want to believe, but I'm a lot like Lauren in that I want the science to be able to back it up. I want to have some evidence. So I consider myself an optimist. I want to know that it's real.
Yeah, and you said you grew up Pacific Northwest. Obviously, that's considered a big area for Bigfoot sightings.
Very much so, and there are a lot of them.
Yeah. So, what say you about the Bigfoot phenomena? Are you on the fence about it? Where do you kind of stand on it right now?
Well, again, I want to have that evidence, but I also know that there's such a big world out there. We actually went back to that area last year and did some hiking, and I really believe that there is just so much space for something like that to live. The habitat is perfect. Plenty to eat, plenty of food, plenty of water, all the things that they need under the Maslow's hierarchy of need is there. They have shelter, and we walked right up on deer. We wouldn't have even known they were there if they hadn't moved. I mean, we were within 3 feet of a couple of deer. And so, anything that holds really still is not going to be seen until they move in that kind of environment, because everything out there looks like Bigfoot. All the trees are mossy and wet, and it was just really difficult to try to find anything as thick as the woods were there. So I definitely see where there's plenty of room for a creature like that to live out in that area.
Now, Betsey, did you have any people talk about stories when you were up there? Did you hear a lot of stories? It seems like being in that area, there would be a lot of tales or stories about Bigfoot sightings.
Yes, everywhere we turned, I talked to people, and they would be like, we'd be out hiking or something, we run across somebody, and I'm down looking down, I'm looking for footprints and things like that. And so I would talk to people. I love people. I love to visit with people. I love to hear their stories. And so I would ask people, what do you think about Bigfoot? You see anything out here? And occasionally I'd hear somebody say, we had rocks thrown at us, or we heard something, or, I thought I saw something. I hear a lot of stories. We have reported Bigfoot sightings here in Oklahoma as well. And I've had several people that I've talked to that have come forward to me and said, I want to tell you my story because I think you'll believe me. And I don't want to tell somebody who's going to just, mock me for not being, think I'm crazy. But I saw it. And, I'm told that the way you think you'd react when you see Bigfoot is not how you really do when you really see him. So, I haven't been that fortunate, but I've known people who have.
Yeah, and speaking of Washington, there's an interesting several acres of land down in southern Washington. It's referred to as the Issetti Ranch. James Gilliland owns the property. Been numerous UFO sightings there. In fact, he brings a lot of people on the ranch for that very purpose. Are you aware of that area? Have you heard anything about that area, the Issetti Ranch?
Yeah, that's actually not what I had heard about. I'm definitely going to want to have to check that out.
Yeah, it's an area I would love to go visit as well. There seems to be numerous sightings. There's also a lot of talk about weird lights, Bigfoot creatures spotted in around that area. It's kind of a mysterious area similar to Mount Shasta in Northern California. A lot of weird stuff going on there, yeah, and I just kind of wanted to hear what your take was on that or whether you had heard of that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I hadn't heard of that one, but I'm definitely going to look that up.
Yeah, yeah, definitely the City Ranch is one I would like to. It's kind of a bucket list item for me as well. You also cover the ET or alien angle in your books.
I
There's a
do.
lot of I'm not sure if how close you've been following interesting developments over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. The New York Times article came out about the Navy tracking UFOs. What's kind of your interest in there? Where do you kind of lay on that topic?
Again, I've been following that one really closely because the latest report came out. You know, all those unclassified reports came out about the time I was getting ready to launch the Alien Accord, which is book 3 of the series. So I had been paying really close attention to it. I read a lot. I look at the scientific journals. I'm going through and I'm looking through, anything I can get my hands on as far as documents go. So I actually use real science when I'm writing my book. So we have mysterious signals from outer space that are, my storyline is based on what we're actually hearing. And then, of course, then I take and I blur that line between fact and fiction and take my fiction a different direction sometimes. But I try to follow the science as much as I can. So I pay quite a bit of attention to things like that.
Yeah, and there is other books out there that are in the fictional kind of area about, talking about paranormal stuff and stories that may have some hints or elements of truth to them. So is that kind of what you're getting at? Maybe yours kind of touch on some elements that may be truthful and you kind of get blended in with the fiction there.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I like to do because I really do. I enjoy the science. I like the history, and I try to work the real facts in as much as I can and then still allow for the story to carry itself.
Yeah, and talk about so you cover some other kind of mysterious things in your books. What's some things you also cover in the stories and things you're looking at covering down the road here?
Right. So the Maya apocalypse of 2012, I was really interested in that when it was, about that time. I was writing the Jaguar Queen, and I was really interested in what was going on down at Chichen Itza and some of the other areas in South America and Mexico, Guatemala. And I had the opportunity to actually go to Chichen Itza so that I could actually pull in real, the real feel of the environment. I walked around the El Castillo. I was able to go to some of the cenotes, had an opportunity to visit with some of the Mayan people who still live in the area, learn their history, understand their culture, and be able to weave that into the story of a time traveler from the future that had fallen into the past. And so I was able to take that actual history and knowledge and work that into the storyline and still be able to weave that mythical element into it as well. I am currently working on book 5, which is going to deal with the Knights Templar. I have some family history associated with that, so I'm really interested to be able to pull some of that in. Again, looking at all the actual history and then being able to weave my own mythos into some of the story there. At some point, I'd like to get to the Loch Ness Monster. I haven't gotten to that one yet. We're looking at the Bermuda Triangle. My husband and I went to Bermuda on our honeymoon, so I've been there. I always try to go to the places I write about, but I don't always get the chance to do it before those books come out. Sometimes I just have to use my own imagination there.
Yeah, another thing I wanted to ask you about is there's a lot of mysterious disappearances that go on throughout the world. Many have been unsolved. Some, some people are found a year or two after they go missing under mysterious circumstances. David Paulides writes about it in his 411 book series. He's researched a lot of these cases. Just wondering if you've kind of looked into that, the mysterious disappearances, and if you had any thoughts. If you have, you really had any thoughts about what may be going on here?
I have. I'm very interested in that kind of thing. I think one of my favorite lines from a book is, the opening line to Outlander is "People disappear all the time," and that sets up a big promise when you're okay. Somebody's going to disappear. Something like that's going to happen, and so I use that as a plot device in a couple of occasions in the Veritas Codex series.
Yeah, and it certainly begs the question. Here we're talking about mysterious and strange phenomena, paranormal. And some of these cases never do get solved. People are walking with family members and they disappear 20 yards from them and are never to be seen again. And it brings up all kinds of questions about what could be going on. Are they just going into some sort of, interdimensional portal? Are they getting abducted? What the heck could be going on? But it's interesting. I had a guy, Steve Stockton, on the show a while ago, and he delves into this, missing persons, cases. He's been doing that for quite some time, and it just some of these there's just no answers to. I mean, there's the areas where these people go missing, they're combed for days and days and weeks and months sometimes. And then other times, bodies turn up and there's just no answer here. I mean, no cause of death, no clear cause of death. When they do find, it's just one of those things it's just another one of those crazy mysteries out there. And talk about the Bermuda Triangle. What have you kind of gathered in you looking into that and your research into that?
It's one of those things that there's so many different theories on what is causing the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. I'm really interested in the theory about carbon dioxide bubbles causing boats to capsize. Rogue waves, I think, are really interesting. I think there's so many different types of disappearances, between shipwrecks, between plane crashes, that I'm not really sure what the answer is as far as that goes, because there's so many different things and so many different types of disappearances that I don't know that one answer will solve all of them. I think there may be multiple things going on in the Bermuda Triangle. I was really interested in some of the underwater UFO sightings, underwater sightings off of the Catalina coast. I thought that was really interesting. Some of the lights that they've seen underwater there's a whole nother dimension to that. So I know the alien spacecraft in outer space and having a secret base underwater is a popular theory on that in the Bermuda Triangle. So, I mean, there's just a lot of different things to look at there. It's going to be really interesting when I get into that one.
Yeah, it just seems like there's so many different ways you could go with that. Similar to the disappearances, the strange disappearances, there's a lot of different ways you can go with that. The other thing I kind of want to touch on is a lot of things have changed over the last, I don't know, say 10, 20 years about, mysterious topics, whether it be ghosts and the paranormal, whether it be ET and UFOs and the possibilities of that, and even Bigfoot. And I'm just wondering kind of what your thoughts are on that. Are you encouraged by that? Or on the other hand, all these shows are coming out and, some of them, from my perspective, are not really very realistic. But kind of just what's your thoughts on where we are with that now? Are you encouraged by that? And how do you feel about that?
I love the idea that more people are really interested in this, because again, it's just another way to bring people into the scientific realm. There are a lot of people out there who are just out there for the sake of getting attention. There's some of these TV shows that are not scientific based. They're just there for entertainment. It's usually pretty easy to spot some of those, but not always. So I love the fact that there are more amateur scientists out there, because that brings that brings in more people being curious. And I think that's important in our world, is we have to be curious about the things around us, especially the things that we can't explain. And who knows who's going to find the answer? It could be any one of us. It could be you. It could be me. It could be, somebody who's read one of our books or heard a podcast and started asking questions, and they're able to lead to that answer that everybody's looking for. Of course, the scientific field, they've got all the technology and the techniques, and they may get to it first. But the fact that we're all working towards a common goal, trying to be as scientific as we can and documenting the evidence, I think is really important, because data drives everything in science. So I think it's really important just to make sure that anybody who's interested in doing that follows a scientific method and has some techniques that they follow that are validated or can be validated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to have that kind of objective approach to this. I've worked with Paranormal Group for years where we try to do that. I think there's many traps you can fall into. You can come into a certain location assuming it's haunted, and then you're just looking for things that can validate that. And also, when you're in that kind of mindset, perhaps you're subject to things like pareidolia. That's where people see things that perhaps may not be really what they think they're seeing. So yeah, we do have to be careful of that. There's a flip side that I get concerned about sometimes, though, and that is not just the skeptical. I think skeptics can be healthy. We should question things, but there's also the cynics out there who say, you have no evidence of this. You can't scientifically prove this. And even if we get to the UFO/ET topic and, the Navy videos that come out, physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson still to this day says, you haven't shown me anything conclusive. Well, no, they haven't landed on the White House lawn. But I mean, there's that side of science too that wants to kind of just cast out anything that you cannot prove in a lab. And so what's kind of your thoughts on that side of it?
Well, again, I go back to Lawrence philosophy that absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, but we have to question everything. We can't just take anything on its face value. So the continue asking why is its own reward, because we learn. We may not be right the first time. We may have a theory, but we continue to learn, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, now, Betsey, you said you had captured some pictures and evidence on your outings. Is there anything you can share, or you do share on your website or anything?
Yeah, I've got some pictures that I've posted up on Instagram from the investigation at Fort Reno. It's just one of those things that I can't explain. It looks like a face. Is it? I'm not sure. I did everything I could to make sure that I validated the data. I went out before dark and took a baseline of pictures of all the windows in this old Victorian house, which, granted, it's old, wrinkled, bubbled glass. It was, hand blown back in, the turn of the century era. Some of it's been replaced, some of it's not. But I went through and I captured pictures beforehand, took pictures afterwards. It was there in one photo, it wasn't there in another. I let anybody else see, what they think of it, but I have put some pictures up.
Now, I know you've went on some outings in Oklahoma. There's some Bigfoot hotspots. Has anything unusual happened during those visits? And, kind of what have you taken away from it?
I had the opportunity to go down to Hanobi, Oklahoma, which is where they hold the Bigfoot Festival every year, the first weekend in October. And there is a sign there that says, Bigfoot Highway. And I wanted some pictures. So my husband was going to take some snaps. And so I was standing under the sign and I turned and looked at him and I said, "Do you smell that?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, take a whiff. And so he took a deep breath and he goes, "That doesn't smell very good. What is that?" And I said, "Well, it smells like a rendering plant." But that was it. I mean, that was the only thing I noticed. So I talked to my friend who lives down in that area, and I said, "Have you guys ever noticed anything in that area that didn't smell very good? Do you guys have like a paper mill, a rendering plant?" Because I've inspected those kinds of facilities, and they do not smell good. And he said, "You know what?" He said, "The only time I've ever noticed a bad smell is when I thought I was being watched and I thought there was a Bigfoot in the area. I said, well, I didn't see anything. I didn't feel eyes on me or anything like that, but that stink. He said, tell me what it smelled like. So I told him, he goes, yep, that's it. That's what we smell. So that's really the only actual experience I've had myself.
And how about the Northwest? Have you ever ventured out there to do any exploring?
Yeah, we were up there October of last year. That's why I missed the Bigfoot Festival here. I was up in Washington State. We went up to Mount St. Helens, which is where the Veritas Codex is set. And so we were hiking, and of course I'm looking for tracks everywhere, and I'm watching for tree branches being broken off and listening for noises and things like that. We didn't have any personal experiences, but about 3 days after we left, there was an article in the paper up there that said that somebody had found footprints in the area we had been hiking the day after we'd been there. And there was pictures. And so we missed it by a couple of days.
Darn it.
Yeah, shucky darn.
All right, well, let's get into a little bit. I know there's limited information you can share with us about obviously the book series, unless we buy the books and we get into them and read them. But maybe kind of you can give us, I know the first book was the Veritas Codex, came out in September 2020. I know there's a Bigfoot theme in that. Maybe you kind of just give us a little bit of, kind of teaser about the books.
So the series follows television investigator Dr. Lauren Grayson and her team as they go on the hunt for the answers to the world's greatest mysteries. So they're out filming, they're making a TV show. And in the middle of the investigation in the Pacific Northwest on the hunt for Bigfoot, Lauren disappears and she's gone for 10 days. And when she comes back, she has no memory of where she's been or what's happened to her. But all the evidence points to the fact that she was abducted by Bigfoot. So was it Bigfoot? Was it aliens? It's a pity she can't remember. She has no memory of what's happened to her. So the real mystery becomes what happened to Lauren. So that's the first book in the series. That's where we start. Book 2, we get into the Mayan apocalypse. Book 3 is the Alien Accord. And then book 4 is the Monk's Grimoire. And that is about, there's actually a book called The Devil's Codex. And there are pages that are missing from that book. And in the story, Lauren is tasked with finding those missing pages, because if she doesn't find them before the devil does, there will be hell to pay.
Interesting. Now, any of it cover any of the ghostly hauntings or anything like that?
Yeah, we're going to get to the Stanley Hotel, which is one of the few haunted hotels I cannot bring myself to go inside. I have stayed at many haunted hotels, and I had the opportunity to go in and just walk around and do the tour, and I could not get out of the car, and I still don't know why. So we will definitely be into some ghosting in the Stanley Hotel episode.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I visited the Stanley as well. Was it just some sort of strange feeling you got? Bad feeling?
Yeah, I had that sense of dread, and it was just like, I can't go in. My husband's like, well, I'm going. I'm like, okay, I'll be here in the car. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't go in. So I sat in the car and waited for him.
We stayed one night there, and I believe it was on the 3rd floor that we stayed. Not any of the, there's a few notoriously, supposedly haunted rooms in that hotel. We didn't have any experiences ourselves. We went down, at night into the piano room and walked down into the tunnels. One of the people that worked in the hotel took us down there. No experiences we had personally. Heard a lot of stories of other people who had experiences there, but certainly an interesting place and a lot of history there. I've stayed at a few other haunted hotels. One is the Victor Hotel in near Cripple Creek, Colorado. Had a lot of interesting experiences there. The St. Nicholas Hotel in Cripple Creek, which was a former hospital. The room I stayed in was the main operating room of that hospital. So interesting places, interesting experiences there. Betsey, any other paranormal fictional authors that has had an influence on you in your writing?
Well, probably one of the biggest ones is Diana Gabaldon. I don't know that they would really consider her a paranormal author, but she writes kind of, hers blur the lines as far as that goes. There's always kind of an element of paranormal when you get into time travel. So she's one of my favorites. She wrote the Outlander series. I have always been a fan of Dean Koontz. He's one of my favorites. William Bernhardt doesn't write paranormal, but his wife Laura does. So she's one of my influences. He also has some really great books, but his are more legal thrillers. But his wife writes the Wantland Files series. So those are fantastic books. I highly recommend those.
Great. Yeah. Getting back to the book series here, what can we expect? I mean, can we kind of expect to be left guessing at the end, or is there kind of more of a, or can you say, is there more kind of a certain ending with these books? Because I know, like with paranormal themed books, sometimes they leave the reader kind of guessing or kind of, what their own conclusions are to these books.
I use a little bit of everything, different kinds of plot devices and things like that. So every book kind of has its own ending. I try to wrap the story up, but I leave the reader going, there's more to this. And that way they'll want to read the next book. So I'm not a big fan of cliffhangers, although I do use them occasionally. But I try to wrap up as much so as much as at least Lauren knows. And sometimes the reader actually knows more because they can see things that she can't.
Sure. Now, since you've been writing these books, you obviously have a pretty large following. Do people write to you? Do they share stories with you? Do you get those kinds of people interacting with you?
I do occasionally. I'll have somebody, I'll run into somebody out on the street, or I'll talk to somebody and they want to know what you do for a living. And I'll say, well, I'm a safety professional, but I also write paranormal thrillers. And I'm like, well, what do you mean a paranormal thriller? What do you write? And I said, well, about Bigfoot and aliens. And, oh, well, let me tell you what happened to me or what happened to my brother. Or, I'll get stories like that sometimes when I encounter people out in the world. On social media, I follow a lot of the paranormal podcasts and some of the other groups that are paranormal related. So those are the folks that usually already are interested in it. And we just have some great conversations on their experiences and what they've seen. And, I'll ask them a lot of questions. Well, what have you found? Because I'm always looking for that angle for the next book to make sure that I respect the community and I respect, what research they're doing. And, I think it's a give and take on both sides. And I've been really lucky to meet some people who've been able to help me along the way too.
Yeah, and I know your specialty here is obviously fiction writing. Ever consider maybe dipping your toe into writing nonfiction, especially about the mysterious and paranormal type stuff?
That is always in the background. There's always that opportunity when I fully retire from the safety world that I might spend more time writing that kind of thing. I've got some ideas for some things that I've been throwing around and jotted down plots and ideas and plans that I have kind of sitting in a file in the background. But fiction really is kind of my cup of tea.
Yeah. Yeah. You have do you have plans to continue on also in the paranormal investigating realm? Continue on to do that?
Oh yeah, every chance I get, I like to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, for sure.
Any bucket list places you really want to
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to go back to the Stanley. I feel like I think I got to get past that. I think I got to get in there and spend some time. So definitely want to go back to the Stanley Hotel. I have always wanted to go to Scotland. I'm Scottish by heritage, and I want to go and see Loch Ness, and I want to go to the Tower of London, and I want to go to Cambodia and some of the ancient temples that are there. Angkor Wat is on my list. I got to go to Chichen Itza, but Machu Picchu is still out there. I'd like to go there. I'd like to go see the Nazca lines. So I would very much like to be a well-traveled world vagabond so I can do that, but I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, so you've kind of delved into the ancient sites a bit. Stonehenge, isn't that a place you visited?
I have not been to Stonehenge. I haven't made it over to the European continent yet, but I definitely want to go there. There's some other henges in Scotland that I'd like to go to as well. They're probably more ancient, probably less touristy anymore, because I don't even think you can get up to the monoliths now. But I want to go to Egypt, and I want to go to all the places that I write about, I want to go back and revisit some of those places at some point.
Yeah, there's kind of there's a lot of mystery surrounding some of those locations as well. The Giza pyramids, Göbekli Tepe. Some of these sites where, how they created these structures in such ancient times, how they moved these large boulders into place. And, I had Andrew Collins on the show. He actually appears on the Ancient Alien series from time to time. And we kind of got into those discussions a little bit. Have you kind of delved into the mystery surrounding those locations and how they were kind of, mysteriously crafted and designed?
Oh yeah, at some point we talk about most of those. The Ancient Aliens comes in very, very strong in the second book, the Jaguar Queen. By book 4, we start out in Egypt. They're living in Cairo and end up in Prague and then down in Slovenia. So I got into some of the Egyptian mysteries there, talking about how they were built and how they were constructed and some of the archaeology that's going on there. So I'm definitely interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, there's definitely plenty of places I would love to travel to. I mentioned a few of them. Giza is the pyramids in Giza for sure, and certainly some mystery behind how some of those sites were created. Göbekli Tepe would be another one of them. A lot of mystery behind that. Talk about a little bit about kind of more of the mystical type of stuff you write about or cover in your books.
Right. I get into a little bit of tarot. I'm working on one book that has a scene in it where they're doing a tarot reading, New Orleans voodoo. We're going to get into some of the New Orleans and Haitian voodoo myths. Of course, the time travel and the Mayan apocalypse is both pretty strong themed in the second book. Time travel is going to become an important part later in the series. We're just going to kind of delve into a little bit of everything: herbalism, healing techniques, ancient, I'm just blanking out, sorry. There's so many of these that I touch in on that I forget some of the ones that I've used, crystals and chakra stones and things like that. So I try to hit the gambit. I try to pull a little bit of everything in there along the way. At some point we'll get into demons and angels and all that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. Now, Betsey, do you actually do speaking engagements? If so, where do you what kind of speaking engagements are you involved in?
Well, right now I've been doing several writers' conferences. I'll go out and write about my experience as a writer, techniques to use as a writer, things that are beneficial, how to use, paranormal writing, the different genres that are out there. I have gone out and done some speaking engagements. I do a lot of podcasts on paranormal activities and paranormal investigations and then how the books play into that. So I do a lot of that kind of event and really look forward to doing it because I really love doing it.
Any sort of paranormal type conferences, Paracon type conferences you plan on attending or speaking?
Not yet, but I would like to. I think that would be very interesting. That's another bucket list item for me. I've gone to a couple of Paracons just locally and just had a booth with the books and visited with people, heard their stories, talked to them, but haven't actually been asked to be a speaker yet. So,
yeah, the other interesting thing I've kind of delved into, or at least read a lot about, is these, and some people like to call them paranormal vortexes, or just places where, there seems to be all kinds of weird activity going on. A lot of people have heard of Skinwalker Ranch here, just a few hours away from me here in Utah. There's Chestnut Ridge out in Pennsylvania. Have you kind of delved into or researched or read about that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, we have a lot of things in the books that involve caves and portals. So that's not anything new to me. I've done some research on that. I'm really interested in the whole concept of ley lines and how those have energy sources in them. So yeah, definitely something I've looked at.
All right, well, great. yeah, let's talk about a little bit about where people can find your work, where they can find your books, website, all that kind of stuff. If you could share that, please.
Sure. So I have a website. It's author.betseykulakowski.com. I have books available anywhere you buy books. You can get a copy of it. Amazon, Audible, Kindle, Kobo, Barnes and Noble. Most of our books are print on demand. So if you go into your local bookstore, they'll have to order it. So you just have to put in a request and they can purchase those. I have autographed copies at my local independent bookstore, which is Full Circle Bookstore here in Oklahoma City. And you can order from them and they will ship it directly to you at no extra cost. But anywhere you buy books, you can find my books, and the first 3 books are out in audiobook. You can also get it from your local library.
Great. All right. Well, hey, Betsey, it's been great talking to you. It was really enjoy, like I said, kind of covering these new areas on the show. Again, paranormal fiction is just an area I haven't covered. It was great to talk with you and, about your book series. Sounds like they've had a lot of great success. Wish you continued success on your books. And how soon can we expect the next one to be coming out?
My goal is to have that out later this year. I don't have an exact date. It's really kind of up to my publisher, but I've got it ready to go. I'm working on the last round of edits on the last draft, and hopefully we'll give that to them and they'll get it going, and we should see it by the end of the year. Hopefully before September, fingers crossed.
All right. Well, great. Once again, Betsey, I really appreciate you joining me tonight. Have a great rest of your night, and happy trails.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
All right.